Hey folks, good to see you again. You're going to be wondering why I'm standing out in the desert, hot and bothered, holding this piece of steel. Jamie and I have been away for about a week on a road trip and we're back in action, so follow along, figure out the story. See you at the end. Hello, and welcome back to our little shop of horrors. The butchery continues on the 1937 Lincoln Zephyr. Also, got a new welder here. I haven't upgraded my equipment in about 10 years, so today is the shakedown run. Did a little video introducing it, so stay tuned for that, but we're gonna get under the car, do a little checking out, and then work on the rear end as well. Got shock absorbers, body mounts, framework, a lot going on. The car's up in the air, so that's what's up. Stay tuned, and we're gonna get it on. All right, so when we last left off, we were down here in the trunk area. We got that Watts link set up. And aside from that, I just put it on hold. We went and did some other things down in the desert. So this is our new unit. Got it all set up. It's the MIG 2000i. It's a 220 volt MIG welder. It's not going to replace Old Faithful, but it's going to supplement it. The salesperson said, I want to see that big welder parked in the corner waiting for a special event. And that's going to be our go-to for the smaller gauge steel. Got the Zephyr way up in the air. I don't recommend stacking those like that, but I needed the space. If you remember way back when, we were working on this floor and the exhaust manifolds were interfering. You know, we went in, that spark plug wire is definitely not supposed to be there. But we went in and just hacked the floor out. You can see the two bolts in there from the manifold. So we cut out a lot more than we needed just to kind of assess what was going on. So now, like so many things, it's time to step back into it and figure out what we're trying to accomplish is the maximum foot room for the pedals. And I know I'm gonna have to modify this. I'm gonna cut this, give ourselves a little more foot room, because look at all that up against the bell housing. We can gain a lot of interior space with that. Coming around to the front, I got the radiator out of here, did some disassembly. I'm having a hard time. I'm hoping that the U-joint for this steering shaft comes in today. It's a pretty odd arrangement in that you could see that notch in the side, right? So it's got a notch here, and then it's flat. It's flat, dead flat on this side. And then there's like a little keyway on the underside. And it's about a 1/2 inch diameter, so it's pretty small. This will all be unnecessary to talk about if the right one does arrive, but bought it on Amazon. I have no record of anything, so hopefully we can work that out. Otherwise, I know a guy with a welder. We can make that happen. So yeah, looking at this side, you can see we really just got in there and torched it. So I'm gonna roll under the car with a light. All right, so this is what we're working with. Now when we put all this together, again, we're only working from the top side. The car was on the ground because it's a lowered car. So this is the Mustang 2 style cross member. This isn't wet, that's a shadow. Looks like 2x4 box tubing with 1/8 inch wall. We set up the engine mounts. This is all stuff we never saw from underneath. So Dave and Red were here. We set up the engine mounts, got that all together. I'm gonna do some trimming and cleaning up around all this, but that's in place. Here's where the story gets deeper. So yesterday I was under here doing some stuff, right? So this is the Zephyr chassis still intact, even though it's a unibody chassis rail. This is what we added. So it's connected up here, but the stub just came back and was just floating, not really attached. There is a 1/4 inch plate above holding it, but we need to tie this together, box it, and then this is where the surgery was coming in. Yeah, get that light right. So you can see with the exhaust coming down, this tube was like right up against it. So we went in and notched that, and we don't really need this coming rearward anymore. So I'm going to work on plating this whole thing in, plating this in, and probably gusseting out somewhere. And then you can see the floor. We're going to get in from the top side and just try to maximize our foot room. You know, we don't want it too close so that it gets hot. That's where it's at. Passenger side, sort of the same deal, but a little different because, as everyone knows, the cylinders in an engine are staggered. They're not the same front to back, left and right. So this comes through. I was able to put more of a 90-degree plate on that. And the same thing, we're going to cap this off, try to spread it out a little bit more, and then patch in the floors around the starter. No heat coming off the starter. This manifold isn't on, but I'll show you what we're up to with that. It's weird, I searched around online finding the right flanges to meet this. I came real close, but I don't know, they're just a little bit wider and a little bit larger diameter, but that'll be fine for a down tube. I'll just open those up with a die grinder. So that's what's happening here. One of the things I was concerned about was sharing this type of information because it's just under the car. It's not very glamorous, and I don't have a lift, so that's kind of what it looks like from underneath. I'm going to step into the back, and that's today's challenge. All right, so here we are in the back end, and this is where we left off. Airbags are in, Watts link is working, and this is what I'm thinking. We have this area here, that's a direct shot downward. So if I plug the tape measure in there, you could see we could set a shock absorber up right in there. Plenty of room. Let's go to the table and discuss what I got. So for the rear shocks, it's kind of a challenge because all I had was these chrome pieces from Speedway, and they're relatively short. They're roadster shocks, and I thought they'd be cool because they're chrome, but they didn't have enough travel. So I went to the local auto parts, and we went through the numbers. See, this one has approximately 4 inches of travel, and looking at that axle and cycling it, we needed more like 6. And I wanted something inexpensive, and that was going to work, so we came up with these. Part number from O'Reilly's is V0101. I'm considering that kind of an go-to shock for this type of thing. I don't know what the dampening rate is, etc., but it's got 6 inches of travel. The difference is the top mount is more like a Volkswagen style with this upright threaded fitting, and it's going to need bushings too. It didn't come with those, unfortunately. Most shocks do. This didn't. So yeah, the challenge is going to be to get this mounted, and that plate should be very straightforward. A plate with a couple bushings. I have a lot laying around. But then there's this one other thing with the inside of this. Hopefully this translates. You'll see on this one, it's just an even straight shot right through. Most shock bushings are like that. The odd thing about this, you see it's like that. But look at that. It's like wider on one side. So it's tapered in there, and I don't get it. That's not going to stop us. What we're going to do is, I have these shock bolts. We're just going to put that on the multi-tool, and we're going to sand that into shape. That's going to lock right in there. I'm going to set up this a little bit more closer up. We'll get into it. What I was able to accomplish here was get that set in. You know, we're going to have a plate in there, so just enough for that. and both sides work. All right, so that's where we're at with that. Good fit. Have 2 brackets going in there. And for the front end, or the top end rather, it has a bushing. And funny story, I went through everything. I have multiple boxes and bins since our move, and usually where I kept this stuff was in a cart, and the cart subsequently rolled off the trailer. So you've seen me go to the cart multiple times, and yeah, I kind of just gathered everything up off the pavement and threw it in a pile right there. So I was unable to find the bushing I need. I found something like it. So we'll be able to mock this up. You know, that just kind of goes on there. You'll notice, like on a Volkswagen style, there'll be 2 of those bushings with a smaller inside, so that thing can have a little twist. But I got 1. It's enough to mock up a plate. So I'll step over to the car. We'll get to measuring. So that's the area where it will be located, and this shock is extended. So this shock is going to sit somewhere in here, just below that surface, so it has room to wheel around should it need to. So yeah, that plate will be, say, 2 5/8 by probably 5 is cool. Yeah, 2 5/8 by 5 should do it. With a hole, we'll establish as close to the airbag as possible, as close to the axle. Turns out I have this 3-inch stock, so it's going to sit on top of that tubing. So we're going to do 3 by 5 2 times. I noticed that there's some welds that are a little bit tall through the backside here, so I'm just going to weld this up. That way I can grind the tops. This is our first try on camera with the new deal. You can hear that snap. It's just a hot arc. I really like it. I got this one spotted in place just for now, because in case I got to take that off and just double check some stuff through the cycle of it, I'm going to focus on making these bottom brackets now. I'm going to do a little check on the camera and see if you can see in there. I might reposition it. Let's see. All right, I'm going to crawl under and check that and see. All right, little puppet show here. I'm going to close this. So that's fully closed right here. We're going to be making the bracket from there to there. Quick test. I'll be right back. So crawling under here, you know, we had made the brackets for the airbags and stuff. So the axle we see is a 3-inch diameter. So we're going to make a 3-inch, you know, cut in the piece. And then we're going to want to drop it down, pushing this shock up into position, because this is full drop. So just to say, hopefully you can see this. If you can't, I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm measuring from the bottom of the axle to the center of the eyelet, and I'm getting a 3.5-inch drop. So total from the top of the bracket is going to be 6. So again, we want it 6 inches down, 3.5 from the bottom of here, and then we want it coming off the axle because we don't want the shock to hit the axle at any time. So we want this bracket to be at least 1.5 inches off. That's a lot to remember. Let's go to the table. Here we are at the table. I might jump under the car off camera a few times just to clarify a few things. But we're gonna set up a center line right here. And as I remember saying, I wanted this 6 inches of bracket. So that's our 6-inch mark. Now we're gonna want our 3-inch axle at the top of that. So will we get, no we won't. We're gonna want this bigger because we need a minimum for our hole. The hole for the shock absorber, you're gonna need some action below that. So let's measure up 3.5. This is gonna be the start of our 3-inch curve, right? But we want it to be 2 inches deep. Let me find a 3-inch piece of something. How big is this anchor lube? 2 3/4. Close enough for me. So we're gonna want, and again, I'm just gonna kind of do a little action here off the side of it. It'll probably be 3 inches, give or take. Right? So that's our axle. Hot diggity, a little bit 3 inches more. I like it. So our axle's in there. From the bottom of that to the hardware is 3.5. But remember, we want it 2 inches back from the axle. So that's here. And again, I'm just using a quick judgment, like so. Like so. You know, these look parallel. We're coming in like that. So the shock body, again, I'm just going to use this as kind of an example, right? You don't want the shock to ever hit that axle. So you want that hardware, yeah. I think if we put that hardware right about there, we're cool. So we're going to drill here. And then let's see, what do we want to do with this bracket up here? We don't need it to wrap all the way over the top of the axle. You know, that's quite a grab. I think this much grab should be adequate. So let's just say let's look at this, right? Kind of through there, and we'll grab. Yeah, let's say we want that much meat on that bracket. Yeah, let's grab right to the bottom of the axle. So we'll come through. And then for here, you know, this looks like a pretty substantial amount of grab for a shock absorber. So let's just say that. So let's use the template here. You know, this stuff is good for more than one thing. We're gonna pull that. Then we're gonna come down. Yeah, it's a pretty bulky bracket. We're gonna have 4 of those. Let me get my cutters. So I know this looks messy, right? But when it comes down to just the basic shape of the steel, see, we're trimming this way back. Bring it down. We're gonna follow that contour. See, I did the wrong one because we're not going to the hardware. No biggie. This is just paper. We're gonna follow that around. We're gonna give that some love. And then we're gonna come in through here. For the axle. So that's the bracket. The shock will mount on that. Man, we almost don't need 4 of them if I make that strong enough. I don't know if I have the material to do that. As usual. Dang it. That's what I get for making such a substantial bracket. That's 4.5 inches by 7.5. I bet I could just use one of these per shock. Oh, here we go again. Not enough material in the wilderness. Well, 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 just like old times. Looky here. That's a big hunk of steel plate. Nice to see everything is as it was. Yeah. I think that this will do just fine. So, fortunately, well, unfortunately, I have to drive an hour to get here. Looks like it might have rained. We have this too. All right, I'm gonna throw both of these in that truck. I have a pretty cool idea about the shock mounts. It'll just be a single plate with kind of a gusset and then a surround to grab both sides of that bottom eyelet. I think I'll make an episode just about that. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make this as interesting as an outro as possible. Thanks for joining us. Not a story about the desert.